Nobody plans it. Nobody sits at their desk on a Monday morning and thinks this person is going to change something inside me. But slowly, quietly, without a single dramatic moment, something shifts. And by the time most people realize what's happening, they're already deep inside a feeling they never expected to find in a fluorescent lit conference room, between a cup of bad coffee and a shared project deadline. This is the psychology behind something millions of people experience but rarely talk about honestly: the way two people who work together, day after day, start to become something to each other that no job description ever prepared them for. Here's what most people don't understand about emotional closeness. It doesn't require chemistry in the traditional sense. It doesn't require candlelit dinners, romantic gestures, or intentional pursuit. What it actually requires is far more subtle and far more powerful. It requires time and repetition. When two people share the same physical space, the same stress cycles, the same small victories and frustrations, day after day the brain begins to classify that person differently. Not as a coworker in the distant professional sense, but as someone familiar, someone safe, someone the nervous system has learned to associate with stability and understanding. This is where workplace emotional bonds begin. Not in a single powerful moment, not in a sudden realization, but in hundreds of tiny, unremarkable interactions that slowly accumulate into something the conscious mind hasn't fully processed yet. And this matters because most people walking into this kind of connection have no idea it's already begun. They're 3 months deep into a pattern of behavior before they even stop to ask themselves, what exactly am I feeling here? Psychology has a name for this. It's not just attraction. It's not just friendship. It's proximity-based emotional bonding, and it operates quietly, beneath awareness, reshaping how two people see each other without either of them making a single intentional move. Think about how it starts. It starts with nothing remarkable. A shared laugh during a long meeting. One person noticing the other looks tired and saying something small, rough morning. A brief conversation at the end of the day that goes 5 minutes longer than it needed to. None of these things feel significant in the moment, but the brain is cataloging all of it. Every interaction becomes data. Every positive exchange registers as a small reward signal. Every moment of being understood, truly understood, in the middle of a work pressure both people are feeling simultaneously creates a tiny neural thread between two people. The first behavioral shift is almost invisible. One person starts looking forward to certain parts of the workday, not consciously, not obviously. They're not even sure why Tuesday feels slightly better than it did a month ago. They don't connect it to anything specific, but they're beginning to orient their energy towards someone. Then comes the second shift, the small adjustments, the subtle grooming before a particular meeting, the slightly longer reply to a message that could have been answered in one word, the pause before leaving the office to see if that person is leaving too. Again, none of this feels like a decision. It feels like just how things are going lately. The third shift is where emotional investment appears. Both people begin to notice things about each other that have nothing to do with work. How the other person handles stress. What makes them laugh genuinely versus politely. How they treat people who have less power than them. What they care about when nobody's evaluating them. This is profiling without realizing it. The brain building a picture of a person it has already decided it wants to understand more. And then the fourth shift. The one that changes the internal narrative. The day one of them is absent, nothing dramatic happens. There's no crisis. Just a quiet day at the office that somehow feels slightly less textured. A meeting that goes fine but doesn't generate that specific kind of energy. A lunch break that feels surprisingly flat for no logical reason. And somewhere in the back of the mind, a question forms that person might not say out loud. Why does today feel different? They already know the answer. They're just not ready to say it. This is the moment most people misidentify. They look back later and say, I didn't realize when it started, but if you study the psychology closely, this is it. This is the pivot point. The day the absence of someone becomes noticeable. Because emotional attachment doesn't truly register until there's a gap. You don't understand how much weight you've placed on a presence until that presence is temporarily removed. Until you notice your attention reaching for it and finding nothing there. Psychologists describe this as attachment. Cue activation when a person's nervous system begins to treat another individual as a source of emotional regulation. Not just a pleasant presence, but something that was quietly filling a need. And the critical thing to understand here is that this shift happens far beneath deliberate choice. Nobody in this situation decided to become emotionally attached. They didn't plan it. They didn't pursue it. They didn't even fully notice it happening. The brain made this decision on its own through repetition, proximity, and accumulated positive association. And once that shift occurs, the entire nature of the relationship changes, even if nothing visible has changed at all. Conversations carry a slight electrical undercurrent. Silences feel different. Eye contact holds a fraction of a second longer than it used to. Both people feel it, but neither person names it yet. Let's go deeper into why this happens, because the mechanism here is not romantic in origin. It is evolutionary. The human brain was not designed for the modern workplace. It was designed for small tribal groups where proximity meant belonging and belonging meant survival. The people you spent the most time with were the people who mattered most to your physical and emotional safety. That ancient wiring doesn't disappear in a modern office. It just operates in a different context. When you spend 40 to 50 hours a week in the same environment as another person, experiencing the same pressures, solving the same problems, navigating the same interpersonal dynamics, your nervous system reads that as deep social integration. As tribe, and within tribes, emotional closeness is not optional. It is automatic. There's also a psychological phenomenon at play called the mere exposure effect, first documented by researcher Robert Zajonce in 1968. The principle is simple and powerful. The more we are exposed to something, the more we tend to like it. Familiarity on its own breeds positive evaluation. Apply this to human relationships and the implications are significant. Every day you see the same person, your brain is quietly building a positive bias toward them. Not because of anything they've done, simply because of the repetition. Now add to that shared stress and the chemistry becomes even more potent. Research in social psychology consistently shows that people who undergo stressful experiences together form bonds faster and deeper than people who share only pleasant ones. The emergency meeting, the impossible deadline, the client who almost pulled out, these high-pressure moments create what researchers call foxhole bonding. The sense that this person was in it with me. And that sense of shared survival creates trust at a biological level. Mix proximity, repetition, shared stress, and emotional recognition together, and you have the psychological ingredients for deep attachment forming in a context that was technically just supposed to be professional. The final layer is uniqueness of understanding. In the workplace, people often show a version of themselves they don't show anywhere else. The way they think under pressure, how they solve problems, what they prioritize when stakes are real. And when another person witnesses that, when they see you at your most competent, most stressed, most genuine, the resulting bond carries a weight that more curated social interactions rarely develop. Your friends know who you are on weekends. A close coworker knows how you handle a Thursday at 5 p.m. when everything's falling apart. That kind of knowledge creates intimacy that surprises people, because it didn't feel like it was being built. This isn't just a workplace story. This is a fundamental, human story about how emotional bonds form in the spaces we inhabit most consistently. In modern life, millions of people spend more waking hours at work than they spend with their partners, their friends, their families, the office or the digital workspace, the shared Slack channel. The recurring Zoom call has become one of the primary environments where human beings seek and find emotional connection. And yet we are culturally trained to maintain a strict internal separation between what is professional and what is personal. We are told that the two shouldn't mix, that healthy adults keep clean boundaries, that anything developing beyond professionalism is a complication, a risk, a problem to be managed. But human emotional neurology does not read the office handbook. It reads proximity. It reads consistency. It reads care and recognition and shared experience. And it builds attachment and response regardless of what context those experiences occur in. This creates a deeply uncomfortable modern tension. Millions of people find themselves navigating feelings they weren't supposed to have, in a setting that provides no language or framework for processing them honestly. The result is often a long period of emotional ambiguity where both people know something is there, where the quality of every interaction has shifted, where the professional relationship is being quietly held together over something far more loaded, but where neither person has the vocabulary or the permission to acknowledge what's actually happening. And during that ambiguous period, the emotional weight just grows. Unspoken, unnamed, but entirely real. Here is what all of this means for real human lives. If you've ever found yourself looking forward to a specific part of your workday in a way that had nothing to do with the work itself, this is the psychology behind it. If you've ever noticed that a particular colleague's opinion carries more weight with you than logic alone would justify, this is why. If you've ever been confused by how much a professional relationship started to feel like something else entirely, you weren't imagining it. And you weren't being irrational. You were experiencing a pattern of emotional bonding that psychology can trace, explain, and verify. The question is never whether these feelings are legitimate. They are. They follow from one of the most consistent and well-documented psychological mechanisms in human behavior. The more important question is, what do you do with that understanding? Because becoming aware of the mechanism doesn't necessarily make navigating it simpler, but it does something valuable. It replaces confusion with clarity. It allows a person to see their own emotional experience with a degree of honest recognition rather than dismissal or denial. And in matters of emotional life, clarity is always more useful than confusion. Before this video ends, sit with two questions. The first, at what point does a professional relationship stop being just professional, and is it ever truly a single moment, or always a quiet accumulation? The second, how many of your most emotionally significant connections in life began not with intention, but simply with time, with the ordinary fact of two people repeatedly occupying the same space? Think about those two questions honestly. The answers might reveal more about how human attachment actually works than any dramatic love story ever. Motivational closeness doesn't always begin where we expect it to. It doesn't always arrive with clarity or announcement. It doesn't always follow the scripts we were given about how connection is supposed to form. Sometimes it builds in the background, in the margins of ordinary days, in the quiet space between a forwarded email and a conversation that lasted longer than it needed to. In two people learning each other slowly, without realizing, through the simple, relentless proximity of shared human work. The office doesn't create love stories, but it creates the conditions under which something emotionally real, something the heart doesn't easily explain or dismiss, can quietly, steadily begin.